guess that was the reminder. Me frantically running. Okay, so now, for those of you who do not know Cherie, I'm going to give you a little bit of background because I forgot to do that last time. I just assumed everyone knew this amazing speaker. But basically, while creating hundreds of low-maintenance commercial and residential landscape designs and schoolyard habitats throughout Texas and beyond over the past 30 years, native Texan Cherie has authored books for both children and adults, and contributed to more than 100 magazine and newspaper articles on gardening and design. She shares her passion for creation and its creator at conferences, churches, and schools across the nation, as well as on television and podcasts. And we are lucky enough to have gotten her 2 months in a row to be our guest speaker. So while we're all here for Cherie, I'm gonna let her take over, okay?
I see some new faces in here. I'm sorry you missed last time, and I hope you'll catch up with the talk last time. It was on native plants, and that's truly my big passion. And so I hope if you didn't get to make it last time in person or online, that when those come out, and you know, Kat just gave me some new information. I didn't realize these were going to be edited. So I'm wondering if they can make me skinnier, a good side or a bad side. I don't know how that works, but we'll work on that anyway. I'm going to be talking tonight on 24/7 landscaping. It's something that I really didn't think a lot about in my younger years. I didn't have time to sit down for very long, to be honest. And as my children grew, I also developed an illness that I was not able to be out in the garden for several years. And during that time, I just became depressed. If you're a gardener, you know that if you can't be out, I mean, rainy days, it's like, oh, come on, finish this up. I know you need your water, but we just need to be outside. We just need to be outside. And so during that time, though, I had a dream. I'm not trying to channel wonderful Dr. King here, but I did have a dream. And it was of a night garden. And it was one that I recognized, but I'd forgotten about from my grandmother's home. And she had little white pebbles that lined the area, and mostly white flowers in that. And we would go out with a flashlight and go into the garden at night. We were looking for frogs and things like that. But I had forgotten about that. And in that dream, I remembered it. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what happened from that. But I want to encourage each of you to think about your yard a little bit differently. And don't just shut off when the sun goes down. Even if you stay inside, and there's a lot of reasons to do that in our weather, you probably have a window that looks out into the backyard. And so that's your primary painting from that room. And if you can address it the same way you would as an interior room, you'll be able to enjoy it all the time. So think about space, sights, sounds, and smells. Those are the ingredients of your 24/7 landscape. Mainly, I want you to have fun with it, though. In the front yard, you are a little more limited, and Kat and I have talked, and Megan and I have talked about, I'll probably be doing another series next summer, and I will include one on landscaping, actual steps of landscaping for that one. But I want you to have fun in your backyard, all right? That's your space. I want you to have fun back there. And don't think you have to do it all at one time. Just have your ideas and work towards it like you do anything else. This is Monet's garden, Giverny in France. I got to do this with my daughters when they were younger. And most of us don't have yards that look like that, mainly because we can't grow these plants. They're not going to do well here. It's too stinking hot, right? But the main thing is, if you have a 24/7 plan, half the time, it's going to look like this if you've not thought about what you do the rest of the time. So there are a whole lot of reasons to have that usable space outside. But specifically at night, I want you to think about how much you invest in your landscape. I mean, you know how expensive it is. How many of you got some damage? I've talked to you individually, but how many of you got some damage from this storm? Have you had to pay to have a tree cut down or limbs removed? It is so stinking expensive to do anything. If you spent over $2,500 on a room in your home, would you not go in there at night? I mean, you wouldn't even think about that, right? Another thing to think of, and I've met a number of people that have issues with skin cancers, and they just are not able to really garden like they want to, they think. But if you kind of think about it in another way, you have plenty of time to garden. And then the other thing is time. You know, a lot of us, I see, have gray hair, or maybe should be gray hair. And we don't have necessarily the work and family commitments. But as a grandmother, I know those things start adding up. As a volunteer, they start adding up very quickly. And you think, how in the world did I ever work? The other thing is, of course, the temperatures. Okay, we have hotter days and still pretty warm and humid nights, right? But at least it's cooler. You know, if you get in the shade during the day, it's a little bit cooler. And it's the same thing at night. One of the main things about gardening at night, though, is you're going to see creatures and plants that you never knew existed. Now, you may have known the raccoons were out there because you saw the evidence of them. Your trash can is messed up, or they've torn something out, or if you're like me, they take one bite of your tomato and say, maybe not, I'll go to the next one. But there are so many plants, and we'll go through those. I also wanted to talk about fireflies. How many of you seen a firefly lately? I was really concerned. You have? One. Okay, one. And it was beeping, trying to find a mate, right? Well, if you haven't seen one, I'll go back to that. Firefly.org tracks them, and there are fewer insects, period. We know that from pesticide use, from climate, whatever's causing it. And I know there are entomologists that can swear this and this and this. I don't think any of us really know, because it's everything. But we do still have fireflies. One of the things that they have found recently, just that I learned on this website, is they have modified. There is so much light pollution that they have modified. It doesn't work anymore. So they're having to find different ways. And I thought that was just so interesting. So they're not gone. They're still there. They're not. When we were kids, we saw them all the time because there weren't as many lights. Now we don't see them as much. So what is in a nighttime garden? Everything that's in a daytime garden, it's the same garden, right? Except you're going to have some things that you add into it. But the main thing that's missing is daylight. So you're going to have to provide some of that light. So think first, how do I use the space? Some of you are going to recognize my grandchildren in this, my husband and the putting green when we first put in our pool. Think about how you use that space. We have lights here at the putting green so that when people are there at night, we have floodlights there. I don't keep them on all the time, mainly because my bedroom's right back over there, but also because I don't want to flood out my neighbors, and I also don't want to mess up what's going on in my backyard at night. And so those floodlights can come off and on as I want them to. And that's another thing to think about. If you do install floodlights or any kind of lights, think about, okay, I've put them on a timer. I don't have to think about them. Make sure you can do a manual override on that, because if it's got a sensor on it, you don't want to have to be doing like this all the time to get it to come on, right? Dining area, that lower left one. A number of my clients over the years have had a huge table, and that's great when they have a huge family. But what about when you don't have a huge family? What about if it's uncomfortable seating? As I've gotten older, I'm a little bit into comfort these days, you know? And so you don't necessarily need a huge table. You may just need a little seating area that has a whole fire pit, but that also can be used. And that's what I've done up here with my grandchildren. That is my fire pit, but I have a little roll-up wooden table that I can put over the top of it during the summer. We can use it also as dining. Now we're up under the shade with the fans going, but my grandkids don't care. And they're in their swimsuits. So I want to make sure they're not getting everything dripping wet anyway. A bed. I mean, what a great place to take a nap. A hammock is wonderful. I can't get in and out of a hammock anymore. And so having more of a bed that you can use as a couch or seating area also is a wonderful idea. So think about how you would like to use the space. And you may need to put your furniture on Woodlands Online. You may need to donate it to Angel Reach. You may need to find a new home for it. If it's not comfortable, don't keep it. Find something else that you're going to enjoy. All right, we have a lot of different pictures here, as I know, and I'm bad about this. I'm sorry, guys, but I want everyone to zoom in on what they're looking for. This top one is at my house also, with my lap pool. I have just lights in 2 places, and the pool itself. I have a piece of statuary at each of those 2 places, but the pool lights are what is cool. My grandkids just finished Camp Cece for 2 weeks. As my neighbors know, it gets really loud back there, but they love to swim at night. It's also a beautiful thing to have going for just a little bit of light with a pool or different kinds of lights that you can put up that are not going to take up a lot. Now, you look at that wonderful little swing there looking out into the garden. That's a great spot. But think about it at night. What are you going to need to do there? There you would want to have, maybe you've got probably enough sun. You could put in a few solar lights that would just light up just a few areas that you want to see. You could put in, there are wonderful pond lights now that are relatively inexpensive. And especially if you wanted to put them in conjunction with one of the small fountains that can be done. And most of those are solar. A lot of those are solar. There are so many solar products now that are great. Now, having said that, remember, solar, it needs sun. If you've got full shade, not going to do well. You've got to put that battery somewhere where it's going to get some sun. Do you need some space for cooking? There are lots of different ideas. There's mobile Costco cells. And I'm not wearing anybody's t-shirt. I'm not getting any kickbacks from anybody. But there are some wonderful little small kitchens that are for outside that you can just buy there on wheels. There's a lot of different options for that. If you really want to be a gardener at night, to have a glass house, wouldn't that be wonderful? And just go out there and piddle at night. I like that in these areas you have walls. You have a ceiling most of the time. Now, you don't want a ceiling if you're going out there to look at stars, obviously. But that enclosure that you get, now in the summertime, remember, you want some light walls because you need some breeze through there unless you've got a nice fan. And we will get to mosquitoes in a moment. I know what you're all thinking. I know what everyone in here is thinking. So let's talk a little bit about the lighting itself. It goes back to what your purpose is. There's a lot of different kinds of lights now. Do you need something for security? You know, the homes that Butch and Diane and I live in our neighborhood, they're so nice. They built in these beautiful up floodlights, but it looks like an airport. I mean, you know, you see the whole house at once. Well, there's no reason to do that. 2 of mine are out now, and I've talked my husband into calling the electrician to come and put some down lights so that I can do that and not have to worry about what it's doing to the insects and everything outside, the birds outside, because it's so bright out there. The mockingbirds are singing outside my office window at 8 o'clock at night in the winter. Spotlights. Have something specific. Don't just, oh, I'll put a spotlight here. You know, I have some wonderful neighbors that are not here tonight, and hopefully they're not watching online. They put up some beautiful lights around their bed. It doesn't show anything except the rocks. I'm not sure what the purpose is. So think about what you're trying to light up. The floodlights, the solar lights I talked a little bit about, making sure they're going to get some sun. And then task lights. When you think about, I'm going to be grilling here, having a beautiful little lamp over to the side is not going to help you when you have eyes like mine. You need a spotlight of some sort. Now, our grill that we got, thank goodness, has a built-in light so that I can see exactly what I'm doing. But think about those things when you think about the lighting. So there are a lot of different types and styles And if you've been to the store lately, a lot of prices. There are some really, really pricey lamps. But the first thing to ask is, what is its job? If it's only to look good, put it in a place where it's going to be the feature. Like, I love this little light over here. But if you had those everywhere, it would look silly. So different types of, I mentioned it, security lights, floodlights, that sort of thing. If you do have them as a motion sensor, make sure they have a manual override in case you're going to need them for something else. For safety, anytime you have a change in levels, be sure there's a light that shows that if you're going to use that space at night. So some of the decks, you can have the little built-in ones, but you can also do a rope light under the lip of that. It's super easy to do. Then to be able to see when you're talking to someone. I mean, I'm of an age now where candlelight looks better and better on me. But you may want to be able to see what you're eating. You may not if you do cook like I do. So in this picture, I wanted you to see all the different ways this has been lit. I'm not necessarily condoning all of them on at the same time. I just wanted you to see that. The pool light, the spa light, the fire pit, the task lighting for the grill, having the overhead light, and then even the doors being translucent have that light through there. So there's a lot of different ways that you can light. One of my pet peeves is these people have beautiful lights everywhere, and I have no idea where the front door is. No idea. And that is a little bit true here. I can see there's an entrance, but the front door is not lit at all. And where's the house number? I can't see that at all. So if you are going to light anything, light the front door and light your house number. That's just a safety issue. If you look at paths, like this is a beautiful use of the little path light with the brick path over here. And those are beautiful little lights, but these are the ones like my neighbor put in around her flower bed, and they look silly. They're every 2 feet, and they really don't accomplish anything. So you're spending a lot of money on lighting. Be sure that it accomplishes something. I love the hidden under that bridge that you don't even see the light where it's coming from. And again, these can all be put on timers if you're not using it, okay. But don't make the mistake is if your lights are on a timer, it also is your landscape lighting. It's also lighting your house number. If that goes off, then your house number will not be lit anymore. So be sure that's on a separate one or it overrides. Think about permanent versus temporary. You may not need, if you're going to have 2 parties a year in your backyard, or if you're just doing it for you, you may not need big time expensive lighting everywhere. Just a few candles. I love this idea of the little Christmas lights in the jars. Isn't that cute? Different styles, tiki torches, and we'll go into this a little bit with mosquitoes, but they're for light only. They're not going to help with the mosquitoes. Now, don't get too crazy with your lighting. I know I said have fun, but don't look like Santa Claus lives there. Just having natural lighting is going to be so much better. If you want to switch it for the holidays or something fun like that, that's a whole different story. But to have a bunch of different lights, it's just going to look silly. It's going to look like a circus. Sorry if I'm hurting feelings in here. To highlight something. If you can uplight a tree, again, you want low voltage. You don't want a spotlight there because you don't want the bugs getting confused, and you're going to draw more bugs. And that's especially true if you have outside lighting. Go with the warm color bulbs. Don't go with the cool color. The blues attract more insects. So go with the warm colors of your bulbs. And I love these little orbs. And you can buy those that are battery operated. They can just go out in the lawn somewhere. Accentuate the positive, not everything and not nothing. That house over there, it's not from any of your neighbors, so you're okay. They did a decent job. It's a little airport-ish to me, but where's the door? okay, everybody can only go to the first step. That's as far as you can go. No one go any further. And in this house, it's a beautiful home, but my heavens, you know, it's just too much. There's lights everywhere. I don't even know where to look. In speaking of that, that Dark Sky International, it's darksky.org. And I really recommend, they have criteria for lighting that you can go on there and find lighting. But the main thing is with exterior lighting, they have the criteria that a manufacturer has to meet to get dark sky approval. In other words, if you look for an outside fixture and it says darksky.org approved, then you know it's a good one. They've done their research and they know that it's going to be a good product, and it's also not going to interrupt the cycles of the insects or the birds. And a lot of times the birds are looking for the insects, and I'll say snakes do too, but I'm going to start that road. All right, now we're going to talk about plants, and everybody goes, finally. White and other pale colors are going to reflect light. No, you don't see them as much in the day unless it's cloudy. Now, a lot of you have very shady yards. So white and light colors are going to be the best ones for that too, because they're going to show up so much better. A lot of flowers will not bloom as much if they're in full shade, right? But we do have some that will. Scent and color will attract us, but also the natural pollinator, the nocturnal pollinators. And I would suggest that when someone online says it has a wonderful scent, or even if I tell you that, before you purchase it, smell of it, because often it will, my good is not your good. And you know, my grandmother wore jungle gardenia. You remember that perfume? Wow, it was strong. And gardenias are going to put out their big scent at night because it's mostly pollinated by insects that are at night. And so if you like it a little bit, but if there's too much of it, don't do that. Back away. There are some that have a little bit less to that. Look for specifically night living plants. It's not that they're not beautiful during the day. It's just that usually, just like if you grew up with four plants, they don't open until it's a cloudy day or it's a little bit later in the day. And we'll talk about some specific ones. And then if you have a small area that you want to make your garden room, your night garden room, use pots. Use pots, and I'll go into that a little bit more in just a second too. All right, take your pictures. You're going to get a copy of this. So you don't have to remember it all. You don't have to write it down. But here are just a few of the ones that I love. The night blooming jasmine, and it is strong. A lot of you may grow the jasmine that's a vine, and it will be the same way. Now, these are not from here. So if we get a hard freeze, you know that it's going to die all the way to the ground and you're going to have to start over. So if you put this on your trellis, just know that you're going to have to start over again. So you might not want to make it your focal point. That's a good reason to put some of these that are not natives into pots so that when it's cold, you can give them a little bit more protection. Citrus are some of the best smells, and you do smell them during the day, but they're especially strong at night. Mountain laurel, which of course is native to our west, but in pots, y'all, they don't like all of our water necessarily. They don't like our soil necessarily, but in pots, they do great because you can give it a little bit of gravel at the bottom and put a little more sand into it. And I'll talk a little bit more about how to use the pots in a moment. But just a lot of these that are not super hardy, think about using them in pots. Pots with wheels. I need to say that too. One of our neighbors, our silver bell, Alicia, has a wonderful scent. This almond verbena, have any of you grown almond verbena? Isn't it incredible? It's really strong. I have it pretty close to my front door, but it's far enough away that people just go, what is that? Not, whoa, what is that? So that's not the effect you want to do. Now, almond verbena is native south of us, more into Central America. But there is another aloysia, the sweet bush, sweet pepper bush, that's just west of us, even into Brazos County, it's native. It likes drier conditions. And so it's one that you might want to put into a pot. It does great in pot. My roses. Roses are great for scented garden. My favorite is spice rose. It's an old Bermuda rose, a Bermuda found rose, and it does not have the, I mean, how can I say this? Porta potty rose smell. You know what I'm talking about? It's not that strong rose. It has more of a peppery flavor to it. It's such a nice rose. And it starts out a blushy pink, and as it opens, it gets whiter and whiter. And wonderful cut flower, wonderful cut flower. Mock orange is a great shrub for us. It will lose all of its leaves. So if you're wanting to have this outdoor garden space surrounded by greenery, you probably want to go to more like a mountain laurel or something like that that's going to be evergreen. But the mock orange has a wonderful scent. And doesn't it look like a dogwood? It's not going to ever get that large, but they'll only get about 14 to 15 feet. Our magnolias, this is the southern magnolia, the big monster. But even the cultivars, the Little Gem and other smaller ones also have the scent. It's not super strong, but you can smell it at night. Parsley hawthorn, I didn't do for scent necessarily, but it is so beautiful at night. And it's one of the ones that if you can put a simple uplight on it, it has such interest to it. It has such a pretty, and a river birch. I don't have a river birch up here, but that's another one that is beautiful at night when it has an uplight on it. Right, shrubs is the way to go in night gardens, in my opinion. And one of the reasons is because typically it's going to be a far away from you when you're inside. It's going to be further away. A lot of people want to see their back fence covered. And that's a great place to have your night garden, is on that back fence area. So the Virginia sweetfire I'd spoken about last time, it's one of our great natives. It blooms in the spring. It doesn't have a real strong scent, but it does scent at night. Oak leaf hydrangea, which is just east of us, but does great here. Now you've got to have a lot of room for them. They get huge, but they show up so well at night. They don't have a lot of scent either. Camellias, this is one of the nice white camellias. I mentioned gardenia. And a caveat about gardenias is that there are a lot of newer varieties that they have grown. The radicans, they're a small variety because the August Beauty make it 8 feet tall, 8 feet wide. And so people are saying, oh, but I want a small one. Remember those of you who were here last time, I had the picture of the dog breeds, how they cultivate, and you're getting rid of some of the good qualities in them. Plants are the same way. And so if you get some of the dwarf gardenias, I have people call me constantly that my gardenia is struggling. What kind is it? What kind is it? If it's one of the dwarfs, one of the newer varieties, they're growing it for the bloom, not for the hardiness. And so people struggle with them. They want full sun. Also, camellias don't. Camellias want afternoon shade. Gardenias want full sun. So know what the plant's like. Our great Texas Star native hibiscus comes in a white. It grows quickly. Now, it's the one that I told you, the leaf structure on it, if you can kind of see what it looks like, you know, the DEA may be flying over helicopters your home because they see those leaves and say, wait a minute. But when they see the bloom, they'll know it's buttonbush is a great one for night. It's not that it's necessarily really fragrant, but it has such a wonderful form. It's a nice shrub. And then my other favorite rose is Souvenir de la Monson. It was also Napoleon's bride's favorite. There's a long story about that I'll have to tell you sometime. It's really good. Oh, I missed the middle one in the middle, the biggest one. Hold on. Do you know Altheas? Most people call them Rose of Sharon. What a wonderful night garden plant. And they're so hardy. They do like sun, but they'll do okay in some shade. The oak leaf hydrangea needs some shade. So the sweet spire loves some shade. The yucca down here, if you use the Arkansas yucca, it likes some shade. So we have some good shade plants that will show up in a night garden. All right, some of the herbaceous colors. Think about gray plants. Gray shows up great at night. We grow artemisias. Some people think of Dusty Miller, which is in that same family. Gray plants show up great at night, but we've gone now to larger down to small. So if you're going to be using these, you want them on the front row if your garden is way back, or you want them in a small space if you're going to make more of a garden room. Mint, you know what it smells like, right? And, you know, a lot of different places will say, oh, all the strong herbs will help with mosquitoes. Not unless you sit there and do like that for the whole time. You know, you've got to release the fragrance. So it's not worth it. I'll give you some good ideas for that. Some of our verbenas, this is Princess Blush, that are the light color verbenas, are really nice. Moonvine. Now, the caveat to moonvine is it is in the morning glory family. I love this plant, but beware. It will take over the world. So if you see the little babies coming up after you planted some, don't get mad at me. I've warned you. Datura, that's Jimson weed that killed the pilgrims, right? It is very poisonous. So if you have dogs or small people that might nibble, don't plant this. But it's so gorgeous at night. It is absolutely, that was one of my dad's favorite plants. It's a little concerning that he gave these to everyone. Maybe that shouldn't be concerning because he was not judicious in it and picking only certain people he gave it to. But I've met a number of people in the last few weeks that my dad had given them those. The old dianthus pinks, a lot of times they're called because of the way that it looks like pink and shear's got a hold of the edge. A lot of those have, now again, you'll need to smell of it before you buy it. Some of them have almost a cinnamony smell to them. They're really interesting, but they're in the carnation family. So the phlox, we have our native Louisiana phlox. We have a white variety. Mentioned 4 o'clocks earlier. Now it's kind of like the moonvine. It will take over the world if you allow it to. But if you have a space where nothing seems to grow and even some shade, some filtered shade, it will be a nice ground cover for that. The lilies, the Philippine lily, they smell like funeral homes to me because my grandfather was a funeral director. So that's my association with them, but they are a strong fragrance. So put them back a little bit on the back row. Flowering tobacco is a wonderful scent plant. Fragrant ginger, and I have plenty of that if anyone wants some. And then the pentas, or any plant that has variegation in it, just like with the gray, that white is going to show up at night. They're not necessarily fragrant, but you will have that light. I put inland sea oats over here. It's one of my very favorite native grasses. It does like to take over, but if you've got a spot in your yard where there's a lot of shade and the St. Augustine you've just given up, this is what you can put there, inland sea oats. It will take over the area. What I love about it in a night garden space is if there's any breeze at all, the movement of it, you can hear, just like a pine tree. It has a little bit of a sound to it. And some of the other grasses, our native grasses like miscanthus or like Gulf muley, will also have a little bit of that. Not as much as the sea oats, though. All right, some other things to think about. And I'm sorry, I've lost all the plant people already, but fire and water. This is in my backyard, though, that far left. I have water right next to the front door. I like the scent, the sound of it. I also like that at night, I can hear the highway at certain times of the year. So if I can have a little water fountain going, that's what I hear instead of the highway. Now I have to go to the bathroom a little more often. The little table fountains they have now, they have a little rheostat on it, so you can put how much sound you want to have on it. And they're very inexpensive. I mentioned the fire pit. I have the topping for that becomes a table for the kids. Stones. This is a little water feature that a client of mine has that it's actually made out of a stone. But because it's white, it shows up so well at night. Outside of a window, if you've got a big, nice picture glass window and you have that out there and maybe seating close by, but even if your window's raised, you get to hear it all the time. The stones, I mentioned that my grandmother's garden, she had the little white stones that surrounded the path. That's going to reflect the light. And even in your statuary, your pots and everything, if you'll do that in a white. I love this little imprint of I think it's probably Queen Anne's lace, but how easy would that be to do, to make something like that and have that as your backdrop? But I also like this up here is mirrors, a mirror table, a mirror on the fence. It's going to give you that light back. All right, wind chimes, yes or no? Okay, I see some really big heads, a lot of them going. We have some beautiful wind chimes in our neighborhood. I won't say who it is. Not you. They're very loud when the wind really is blowing. I have never seen this before. This, and again, I'm not making a cent from this, and I haven't purchased anything. So, but you can listen to what the wind chime is going to sound like before you buy it. Isn't that genius? It has the notes. Well, if you're not a musician, it means nothing to you. But you can actually push the little button to play and hear what it's going to sound like. So they have some that go from gongs to little tiny soft sounds. So if you're thinking about a wind chime, that's, I think, where you start. Containers. Let's talk containers. Raised beds. This is also in my yard, the far side. I used white stone there because it's going to bring in a lot more light. Also because there was some already there and I didn't have to buy new stone. But in my mother's backyard on her deck, put some white flowers. We used dark pots, but put white flowers in there so that it shows up for her at night. And she just has little Edison lights across the back of the deck that she has on a timer. Using light color pots. That's going to, even if you've got a dark color, like if you decided you wanted to use the mountain laurel, use a big white pot to put it in, and that's going to reflect some of the light from that. Now, when you start working on pots, again, think about what you're going to be putting in there and put things that like each other together. If they like a lot of water, put them all together. If they don't like a lot of water, put those together. And those are the ones I usually use anyway because I don't like to water a lot. I have an irrigation system, but I don't like to use it very often and haven't had too much this year. But there are also specific potting soils that you can use for specific plants. A cactus potting soil, a rose potting soil. But then there are also general potting soils that have little capsules that are the inside of baby diapers, basically, that will take in the moisture and then release it when it starts to dry out. So if you're not going to be able to water once or twice a day, like some of these plants might want, then get that kind of potting soil. The other thing you'd want to do is get the largest pot you can. I know they're hard to move. That's why you put them on wheels. But then you're not having to water as often. And what I do is a pot in a pot. So I go and scrounge for the tree pots, the plastic pots that a trees come in. And usually Nature's Way, anybody will give you those if you want them. And then I fit that into my other pot. That way I'm not trying to move two heavy things at the same time. I'm doing them separately. So I can take the smaller one out, put it on the trolley, go down the road, and then do the pot later. It's a lot of trouble, guys. It's a whole lot of trouble. It's better just if you can put it in the soil and not worry about it. But sometimes you don't have that option if you want to grow specific plants. So even just, that rock up there, isn't that a cute planter? I thought that was so clever. What about mosquitoes? That's what every single person here is thinking when I say night garden, right? Well, you can do this. It's a real thing. It's on Amazon. but there are a lot of other options. This bed here, look at the fan above it. If you have a really heavy duty fan, yes, it's loud, but the mosquitoes are too small. They can't land on you if you've got a lot of air movement going. So sit under the fan. This thermocell, I have not personally used it. I have a number of clients who have it and they love it. It only covers about 20 square foot. There are some that are go a bit larger, but you only need it for where you are. You don't care that the mosquitoes out there are out there. You want them to stay out there. You just don't want them to come towards you, right? It has a little cartridge in it that you replace after. They're different sizes. I think there's 20 hours and 120 hours and all that. But you're only going to use it when you're out there. And it has a pyrethrum, which is an insecticide, like it's a artificial one that's from something like a chrysanthemum, but it's artificial. But it's going to kill all bugs, okay? And that's my beef with our house when we bought it. Had the mosquito misting system that went all around the entire backyard, including the fence, so which you guys, you're welcome. It did the whole yard. Now, the problem with that is that I'm an organic gardener. And so I have nothing to pollinate my plants. It's killing all the bugs. And so that is my beef with that. You know, I know that people are allergic to insects and they carry a lot of awful diseases and all of that. But you don't have to worry about the ones that are over somewhere else. You just need the ones that are right where you are to be taken care of. I had never heard of picaridin, and I have no idea if I'm saying that correctly, but it's made with something from peppers. And it is supposed to be even more effective than DEET with mosquitoes, not as much with ticks, but with mosquitoes. And it doesn't melt your stretch pants. So I don't know if you knew this, you may have found out the hard way, but DEET will melt some plastics and some different fabrics. So don't wear stretch pants and DEET at the same time. It's not a good idea. But this does not do that. And there are a lot of, you know, there's been tons of research on DEET, and it's been used since I think like the 40s. And people swear that, you know, that's, and even the EPA swears it's all good. I just am a little leery about it. So this is a good one to think about. So fans, number one, the little area repellers, number two. People say, okay, oh, I've got the tiki lamps, you know, with citronella. I've got citronella plants. I'm thinking, good for you. That works for this area. You're going to stand on top of it? You know, it's a good idea, but it's not really feasible for what you're trying to do if you're making a garden space, garden room. This is the best idea. Yeah. This is the best idea to enjoy it. You know, it's not for everybody, but if you can do that, it's great. But there are also other options even within this. I don't know if you've seen them before, but there are tons of different pop-ups that have the netting around them that you can just use for a short time and then take it down and stick it in the garage. So we have a lot of different options for that. All right, I want you guys to think about garden rooms like any other room. You need to be able to use it 24 hours a day. Not necessarily be in it, but something that you can see when you're looking out. The lights come on when you're using it, then you turn them off. You make sure that you're not flooding your neighbor's house or something like that. Be judicious with where you have your lighting. Do it where it needs to be done. Don't light up the trash cans. There's no reason for that unless you're worried about taking them out, right? Light up the things that you want people to see. All right, why do I have a night? This is going to be harder than I thought it would. My dad passed away 2 weeks ago. And the dream that I told you about earlier, the night garden, it was a book. It became a book, Shadow Garden, that MD Anderson did. The little boy that did the moonflower here, he's passed away now. But when this book won awards, it won the American Horticulture Award, Master Gardener Award, and then it won an award from MD Anderson. And my dad got to go with me to that event. So that's why I have a shadow garden. That's why I have a nighttime garden. But you each need to have your own reason to have it. You know, that ugly piece of sculpture that your grandmother or an aunt gave you or a friend gave you that you wouldn't be caught dead having in the front yard, move it to the backyard. That little gnome that's silly looking, move it to the backyard. Put a light on it. Every time you look out that window, every time you walk outside, you're going to smile. And that's what gardeners are supposed to do. That's what we're supposed to do. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate those of you who were glutton for punishment and came back after last time. And I hope if it works out, if I get to do the whole 3-part series next summer, that you'll come. We'll have some different programs, and I really appreciate you guys. Questions. And if you have a question that's really specific to your yard, know that you don't have to ask everyone about it, or if you don't really want to tell them what you're doing because it's embarrassing or what you've done, then come up to me afterwards. I'll stay as long as there are people here. Yes, sir, Butch.
You recommend, we're thinking about putting a beehive in our backyard.
Right.
Is that a good thing?
I think it's wonderful. My daughter has a beehive. She was here last time, and I wish she could speak to that, but she's gone this time. But I mean, I'm all about the insects. That's why I don't want the mosquito misters everywhere. So be sure your neighbors don't have mosquito misters up. Okay, make sure.
I've noticed here in the Woodlands that it's quite dark everywhere compared to where I've lived before, and I appreciate that. But as I think of lighting for my yard, are there restrictions within the Woodlands for how bright you can make your yard or what kind of lighting you need to use?
There are restrictions as far as the architectural review, depending on where you are. So look there first. I'm not aware of any restriction as far as how much light. I mean, hopefully no one will go that way anyway. I do know that if your neighbors call you on it, that often you will be in this room right here to be able to answer to that. So be aware of that. Because I want you to come to listen to me talk. I don't want you to come up here and explain why you've got too much light in your yard.
It's interesting to me though that any place that I've gone at night in the Woodlands is respectful of light pollution. And how is everybody buying into that without being regulated? You know?
Well, I'm sure, Kat, do you know if there are regulations on amount of lighting or percentage of lighting for the Woodlands? I'm not aware of.
So Megan said there are restrictions about shielding light sources, and so they should check with their deed restrictions available on our website.
There's your answer.
Shielded light.
But I think just like when we talked about the native plants last time, we're responsible for this environment. And I understand that if you have a beautiful home, and obviously we have security issues, we have that, health and safety issues we need to address, but they don't have to be on all the time. And if you will look for that bright sky designation, it will tell you if it's one that is appropriate for keeping the insects and birds safe. Any other questions? Anything online, Kat? All right, again, I will stay here as long as you guys are here. We do have a book giveaway. So, okay, this may be awkward. Reach under your chair and see if you feel something that's not chewing gum. If you don't, and there's a chair next to you that is empty, then feel under that chair.
That's what I feel.
It's a good way to meet people.
Trying to do this one. Keep checking.
You check under yours?
It's right in there somewhere.
Oh, it's in here? Look at that.
Check those out.
Oh, you have something under your chair.
I felt like there.
And the book that I'm giving, last time I gave away Bloom and Tales, which had the native plants. This is the night garden that came from the dream that I had. And the children at Indiana did all of the artwork. If you look towards the back, it has their name and their age when they did the artwork. Any other questions? Thank you guys. You've been such a great audience. I really appreciate it. And,